This screen's not on, by the way.
How'd you get these on, sir?
The furthest button.
Press it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutiny Programme Committee. We have a cast of thousands in the committee room. So just for the benefit of those who are online, I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with myself and go to the left. So I'm Peter Black. I'm the chair of the committee.
Good afternoon, Bridge Madhar, Scrutiny team.
Councillor Cyril Anderson, Cabinet Member for Waste Management.
Chris Howell, Head of Waste Parks and Cleansing.
Afternoon, Mark Wade, Director of Place.
Matthew Perkins, Group Leader, Waste Management.
Rob Stewart, Leader.
Peter May, Uplands Board Member.
Lee Wenham, Head of Communications, Corporate Planning and Performance.
Ria Miller, Access Services Manager.
Hello, I'm Adrian Jeremiah, Solicitor for the Council.
Good afternoon, Samantha Jenkins, Democratic Services Officer.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for that. Right, we're going to start off with apologies for absence. Sue Jones has sent her apologies. Actually, technically, all these apologies are from panel chairs, which we haven't formally co-opted yet and won't do till later in the meeting. But as we're going to hopefully co-opt them later, I'm going to read them out anyway. So Paxton Hood-Williams, Mary Jones, who's just been appointed panel convener for climate change and nature, and Sue Jones have sent their apologies, but technically we haven't co-opted them yet. Is there any other apologies I need to know about? Anybody? No? Okay, thank you. Right, disclosure of personal and prejudicial interest. Anybody, officer or councillor, got any interest to declare? No? Okay. Item 3, prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. No? Okay. Thank you. And then item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting. So the 14th of May. So I'm going to go for correct records on page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5 and page 6, and then the 16th of May on page 7. Are we happy that there's a correct record? Yes, okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, public question time. I don't think we've had any public questions so far. So going to item 6, which is the role of the Scrutiny Programme Committee. This is the first usual first meeting items. We begin a new municipal year. There's been no changes in committee membership, so all this should be familiar to everyone present. A couple of things have need committee agreement each year in order to continue to co-opt those councillors appointed as performance panel conveners and co-opt representatives from partner agencies to assist with the scrutiny of Swansea Public Services Board for those meetings only. So all those details are in the report. So can I ask, are we agreed to co-opt those councillors and those representatives, please? Everyone in agreement? Yes? Okay, thank you very much indeed. And of course, although Mary is not here, welcome to Mary Jones as a new co-optee as she's taken over the Climate Change and Nature Performance Panel from Sarah Keaton. So that takes us on to item 7, which is Cabinet Member Questions, Recycling Waste Collection Service. Can I welcome Councillor Cyril Anderson, who's the Cabinet Member for Community Services, Mark Wade, the Director of Place, Chris Howell, Head of Waste Parks and Cleansing, and Matthew Perkins, who's the Group Leader. Cyril, do you want to say a few words in introduction on this, or
Yeah,
Chris?
Thank you, Chair, and the committee for your invite today. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Chris Howells now, who's going to set the scene.
Okay.
And then if there's any questions by the committee, please feel free to ask.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Waste Management Service operates a very large waste collection service. We employ over 120 operational staff, making around 220,000 collections per week. Benchmarking across Wales shows that Swansea has one of the highest recycling performances and also one of the lowest costs per household. Whilst we have had resource issues recently, this hasn't affected our recycling performance, as initial indications are that our Q1 recycling performance for this year remains well above 70% and is slightly above our Q1 performance for last year. We do currently have 12 vacancies in waste collections due to a mixture of retirements and staff moving on to other opportunities. We have had resource issues over the last 3 months with a combination of those vacancies I mentioned, sickness absence, coming into the peak holiday season, essential vocational driver training, which we're currently undertaking. Also, unfortunately, the agency has been unable to provide the extra staff and particularly drivers needed to deal with this additional requirement. This has led to some rounds being delayed until the following day, and in some cases, smaller areas being delayed for longer. Good news is that after a very difficult 5 weeks, particularly from mid-May through to mid-June, the last 3 weeks have been more on track, with just up to 2 rounds delayed per week. The agency has found it difficult to provide us with the additional staff needed, and some of the problems that they particularly find difficult to deal with is when we have last-minute no-shows at 6 a.m. Each morning, and also when we have a fluctuation of need on a day-by-day basis. In order to mitigate against the resource pressure being currently experienced, we are in the middle of recruiting with interviews planned for next week. We are looking to backfill all vacancies and also recruit a further pool of 20 staff to cover absences. This in itself will also reduce reliance on agency staff. The resource pressures certainly have unfortunately resulted in certainly an undesirable level of delay of collections, and we're working hard to resolve them. And hopefully the ongoing recruitment will ensure that the waste collection service is robustness going forward. But I'm happy to answer any detailed questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So of the 70 vacancies in waste parks and cleansing, 12 of them are in this particular area, is what you're saying, but you're looking to recruit 32 altogether.
Within waste collections,
Yeah.
there are 12 vacancies,
Yeah.
and we're looking to recruit 32.
Yeah.
I think of the 70 in place, the figures are slightly distorted because the additional 20 people that we are in the middle of recruiting, to enable us to recruit into those positions, we had to create them in the first place. And the timing of the data you have, those 20 brand new positions are in effect vacancies during the recruitment process.
Okay, so if you're interviewing next week, you obviously take a week or two to actually make an appointment, and then you've got to train them. So how long before these staff will be operational on the ground?
It'll vary depending on what notice period some of the successful appointments will require to give to any current employer.
Yeah.
Usually when we recruit, there's quite a high proportion of successful candidates are actually work for the agency and already are experienced in working with us. So it's likely that the vast majority will be in post, and we'll have effectively continuity from an agency placement through to directly employed status, with a small majority being dependent on notice periods. So they could take a few more weeks to be employed. In terms of training, it's a relatively simple induction process which we require, and that effective can be done on their first day of employment.
A bit more complex if they're driving the lorry though, isn't it?
If they're driving the lorry, then they would have the LGV license in place already, and so the vehicle familiarization might take a bit longer, but again, it's a matter of days rather than weeks.
Okay. Now you said there was only about 2 rounds being missed per week. I mean, I just had notification of at least 3 or 4 rounds missed in my area today. So I mean, and I think the perception amongst most councils, it's much more than 2 rounds being missed each week. So I'm just wondering, you know, is your information correct, given that what we're seeing on the ground is a lot more rounds being missed or incomplete than you're saying?
Yeah, when I say that 2 rounds are delayed, that would be the entire round delayed.
Yeah.
There may well be portions of rounds which haven't been completed on a particular day through a variety of reasons, due to access issues, volume of work, operational difficulties such as vehicle breakdowns. So when I say over the last 3 weeks, 2 rounds have been delayed, that's rounds stood down because of a lack of resources first thing in the morning.
Okay, I understand when you haven't got the people, you're not able to start a round, and therefore that round is going to be delayed a day, which has a knock-on effect for the rest of the week for everybody else. I don't understand this rounds being incomplete. I understand about access issues, but I don't understand the other reasons in terms of, you know, because a round is a round, isn't it? You've worked out how many people you need on that round. You've worked out what resources needed. So why is it that they can't complete that round if there's no access issues?
There can be a number of reasons. It can be a vehicle breakdown,
Okay.
which can delay the round. It can be that the volumes are higher than normal, particularly with garden waste, which fluctuates greatly depending on what weathers we've had over the last fortnight, depending on how much that's been conducive to plants growing and grass growing. There can be, we can have people who are taken ill during the day and leave early. So there's a number of operational reasons why sometimes rounds can't be completed.
So how many vehicle breakdowns have you had in the last 5 weeks?
I wouldn't have that data to hand, but we can certainly find
Matthew, know by chance?
I don't have it to hand, but I can get it following the meeting.
Yeah, please, that'd be useful. Yeah. Okay. Mike White, you got a question on recycling levels? Is Mike there? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mr. Howell has already touched on, obviously, what I was going to ask, but just clarification, due to unfortunate disruptions of services, has it impacted on our levels of our what we collect and recycling? I think Mr. Howell did obviously touch on this in there when he first started to his introduction, Chair.
Yeah, Chris, you...
Yeah, as there have been delayed collections, there's been no impact on the material collected, just potentially a delay. On our Q1 stats, which are currently unvalidated, but showing our recycling performance for Q1 is well over the 70% recycling target, and is slightly higher than the same unvalidated figures for this time last year.
Okay. Has anybody else got any questions before I move on? Oh, Peter May.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I think it's important to divorce recycling rates from the fact of refuse being collected on time. I think that's a little bit of a red herring. Although very laudable, it's expressed as a percentage of what you actually do collect. So let's go away from that. Going back to the fact is, I mean, from a simple point of view, collecting the rubbish is a basic council service, which is a perception of people that that's what they pay their rates for, even though we all know around this table there are many other services that that rates and council tax is paid for. But the question really is, this service is so fundamental to any council. Is it a Swansea problem that we're undergoing at the moment, or are all Welsh authorities affected equally? I mean, supposing if I was to carry out, I don't know, I might do it, I might not, a freedom of information request across the other 21 authorities in Wales, to see how many miscollections they've had since the 1st of January, how would we compare?
Do you have that information?
No,
I'm
I don't.
surprised if you do.
No, I don't.
Matt?
Thanks. Yeah, so we sort of speak to our peers at sort of various benchmarking forums, and we aren't alone in experiencing labour shortages. So again, I don't have answers to give you, councillor, but you know, we aren't the only council who's been experiencing labour issues.
So it's a labour issue.
Yeah, our workforce. So
Yeah.
whether it's sort of people not available or other bits and pieces. Powys, an example, had sort of fairly long-term issues in the north of the county, just not being able to find people. So they were really struggling putting recycling rounds out once a fortnight rather than once a week. So yeah, we aren't alone in experiencing collection delays.
Okay, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I know members will be aware of some operational issues that we have, which are probably best dealt with in a private session discussion where we could go into more detail on that, and members will be aware of that. It's clear that across the UK, as has been mentioned, there are a number of authorities that are having to go through transitional arrangements with their employment practices, and Swansea is one of those. What we are trying to do, and I commend the officers and Councillor Anderson for taking this forward, is getting back to a position whereby we have sufficient resources in place, directly employed, if at all possible, and that's where we're continuing with our strategy of trying to increase our workforce direct employment and reduce our reliance on agency. That is the right thing to do. But to get to a position where if we do have an operational issue, whether it be through mechanical issue or through staffing issue, that we have the resources and capability to recover on the same day. And I think that's where we're trying to get to here. As was pointed out, some of the vacancy data was a little misleading because it was alluding to the fact that we were bringing on more staff at that specific time. Again, given the answer that Councillor Anderson gave at Council last Thursday, in terms of the phasing of the new capital investment, of the new trucks and vehicles coming online, coupled with the fact that we're bringing in more staff to have that greater capability and flexibility, then the aim would be to make sure that the impacts, we can't ever say that we won't have a mechanical issue again or that we won't have a no-show for staff for some reason, but that we'd have the capacity to recover within the same day. And that's the aim here, so that from a resident's point of view, they might get a slightly later collection, but it'll be the same day. And that's what we're aiming for.
I was going to avoid the operational issues in public, but I think we could go into camera at the end of the meeting to touch on those, if that's okay. If you don't mind hanging on to the end of the meeting to do that. I've got at least 3 people wanting to ask questions. So start with Mike White. And then Matthew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just say, obviously the comment Councillor may say, obviously, in regards to recycling, but the question I wanted to find out, that was no red herring at all. At the end of the day, we've all had constituents who obviously were conscious of recycling, and perhaps if their collection had been made, they made comment and say, well, what's the point of recycling if it's not going to be collected? And that's why I want to know if what the figures were in recycling. And as I say, the question was not a red herring at all, Councillor May.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I could share some experiences with Councillor May, having worked within the waste industry for nearly 20 years for a neighbouring authority. And I can assure him that short-term sickness, no-shows and breakdowns are not unique to Swansea Council, and they are very, very disruptive. So I think, it's not ideal that we're going through what we're going through with regards to disruption to service, and it is a very visual service, as Councillor May has alluded to, but also it's not unique to the back end of the week, as Councillor Lyndon Jones mentioned in Council. We're all experiencing these problems. We experienced it yesterday on a Monday collection as well. So I think Councillor Anderson needs to be commended. He's fronted up. Yeah, he's heading the challenge face on, and he hasn't shied away from anything either. And they're trying to put obviously things in place to mitigate any further problems going forward, Chair. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Can I remind members we're meant to be asking the questions, not answering them? So
sorry, Councillor May. Sorry,
yeah.
Councillor Black. Sorry.
Maybe that was a bid for cabinet status, Matthew. I don't know. Okay, Lyndon.
Great, thanks, thanks, Chair. Can I say thanks for the work that's being done. and obviously it needs to happen soon because as far as my ward, it is on a Friday, the collections, and it is not every week, but it's nearly every week. And I know residents are pretty fed up about that. And I've spoken to Councillor Anderson a number of times about this, and thank him for his responses. But I just hope it's going to happen soon, and we heard it's going to, and it's all going to be good. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope it all goes well.
Yeah. Okay, I think my perception is that residents are getting very impatient with where we're at. I mean, certainly I get lots of messages from residents saying, "Oh, not again! This is unacceptable. We're paying our council tax. We expect the service to happen, and it's not happening." And I think we do need to try to address this very quickly because it really is an issue for everybody out there. Cyril.
Yeah, just to come in on that, Chair. Yeah, I agree with your comments, but I'd like to put on record to all the residents out there, I apologise on behalf of the department. We are going through these some sticky times, but I've got all the confidence in my officers and my operatives that are trying their damnedest to alleviate the problem, and I am hopeful that this issue will be resolved shortly.
Okay, I think the other issue is the impact of these miscollections on other services. So you've designed the service so the litter pick takes place the day after the refuse collection, and often the case is if the refuse collection is delayed, the litter pick isn't. So you do tend to get more litter after, irrespective of they're meant to be picking up after themselves. You do tend to get more litter. Bags tend to be broken open by birds because people do put food waste in. I saw a particularly egregious example on Manston Road this morning where a black bag had been split open and there was food waste all over the pavement. So, I mean, are we able to be more flexible in the way we do that at all as we deal with this issue?
Yeah, I can make sure that there's effective communication between the collections team and the cleansing team, and if need be, particularly for black bags, to see whether we can, if any runs are stood down, whether we can reschedule the cleansing on that occasion.
Yeah, okay, so you can have a look at that for us and see what we can do. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, the two questions. It was going to be through, but Councillor Black take the words out of my mouth on the impact on other services. The first point is going to the counting of the dispute between the perception of 2 missed collections a week or more. I want to talk about the counting method because I think what I've seen is say if a Monday collection is not missed, it then becomes a Tuesday collection. Does that impact on the Tuesday collection that would have happened? And would that have counted as 1 missed collection or 2 missed collections if you follow my logic? And the other point I've got is more of a suggestion which we're sort of trialing locally at the moment, and that is it's regarding sort of a waste collection, but it might be helpful and whether your department might consider it. And this is about getting some sort of a campaign for residents to actually number their food bins or other receptacles such as white or pink bags. Because what we found is, particularly with the food bins, since residents and the HMO population in the ward as well have actually been putting a number on the lid of their food bin, ownership is got, it might lead to less food bins being wrecked. In other words, the council has to give less out. Obviously, we don't have to supply the marking material. All it needs is a permanent marker. And we've also had talks in the Mount Pleasant area of the ward, and we're getting that for coastal housing to actually put on issue of a new food bin for them to be managed. And it could be something that could actually cut down the number of food bins that we actually have to give out and reduce breakages and make a saving for the department. So the question is, would you be able to sort of consider taking up some sort of campaign on board to assist matters in that regard?
Chris?
Yes, thank you for those. In terms of the counting of missed rounds, if a round is missed on a Monday, then that's one round missed. We seek to pull extra resource in to catch that up on the Tuesday, so then it would be one round missed. If we can't bring in extra resource, and there are times over the last 3 months where we haven't been able to, and we collect the Mondays on the Tuesdays, which leaves a Tuesday left down, then we would consider that then to be 2 rounds delayed. In terms of the second point, certainly more than happy to help to promote residents in numbering their food bins and recycling containers. I think ownership is very important, and more than happy to consider options for doing that promotion.
Chris, you said you had issues getting agency staff at 6 a.m. in the morning. I fully understand that, who wants to get up at that time when we're not expecting it. But presumably you haven't got any spare lorries, so you couldn't get agency staff to do an additional round the next day, or you've got to use what you've got there.
We do have spare lorries
Yeah.
to be able to put on extra crews the following day.
Yeah.
Over the last 3 months, there's been difficulty in sourcing the extra crews.
Even with a day's notice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's primarily the drivers is the most difficult.
Of course,
The
yeah.
agency advise that they have numbers of carriers,
Yeah.
but not the LGB drivers.
Yeah, they can get paid a lot more in the private sector, can't they?
I'm not sure.
Oh, they can. Okay, Francesca.
Thank you, Chair. I know you actually took my question that I was going to originally ask about if the department can work hand in hand with the cleansing team, because that's one thing I know certainly in Mumbles, I'm probably not the only ward, but it's not just been since May, it has been sort of 12 months ongoing, and it's a real shame because the cleansing team, where we're allocated 6 days per month, do a really fantastic job here in Mumbles, and then it's almost undone when you see the rubbish sort of scattered across the road and the pavement. So again, just to reiterate, if we can have sort of a good partnership there. But on the plus side, I will say, I know I've been dealing with Carl Watkins, who's probably dreads seeing me emailing him, but I will say, to put on record, he is absolutely fantastic, and he's always replied to emails. So despite it's not a great situation to be in, you have got fantastic staff there. So just to sort of commend them for, it's not directly their fault, and unfortunately they're sort of the messenger, so it's not always shoot the messenger, but just to put on record, he's done a fantastic job. And also, just touching upon on the last comment, I know in Clyne I've got residents going there to say to dispose of their rubbish, but there's a real shortage of recycling bags there, and that seems to be an ongoing thing then. I was just wondering if that's something that can be looked at, because obviously we do want to promote recycling and people are doing it properly, but there seems to be a constant shortage of supply there. So I'd be grateful if that could be looked at, and thank you.
Okay. Chris Holly.
Thank you, Chair. Just unmute in. Can I ask Chris, what is the significant difference with this period of time that we've had the problems with the collection, etc., when, let's say, 18 months ago, we didn't have as bad a position, and it does seem to have got considerably worse over this last period of time, whereas, as I say, 18 months, 2 years ago, we didn't have this issue. Has there been anything significant that has changed the reasons why? Is the workforce numbers cut or whatever?
Yeah, I think, Chris, we're going to take that up in camera. That's okay with you? Because
that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else got any questions at all? No, we will come back to this in camera, particularly around the staffing issues, if that's okay. Thank you, everyone, for staying on for that, and thank you for responding to that. I think we can certainly look at those in more detail then. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is item, what number is it? Item 8, item 8, sorry, yeah. I've lost my papers here. Right, item 8. Okay, I haven't got the thing here. Bear with me a second. Which I think it's the co-production one, isn't it? Yeah, there we are. Yeah, co-production, yeah. So, oh, yes, it's there, yeah. So, is Hayley here? Online. Hayley's online. Hayley Gwilliam, Lee Wenham and Ryan facing me. Excellent. do one of you want to introduce this topic? I think we did this working group very early on in the co-production process. So, you know, you've had a year now, so I'm expecting massive improvements and progress. So who's gonna, Hayley, do you want to say a few words first?
Yes, please, if I can. Firstly, to apologise for not being in the room. I was
That's
on
all right.
training earlier today, and it was closer to get home to join online than it was to get to the Guildhall. So apologies for that. Yes, if I could just thank you for bringing us here today and for inviting us back. The report that's brought before you today details our co-production project to date, along with the appendices, which has a copy of the corporate co-production policy, which was developed with staff, elected members, and with the support of Co-Pro Lab Wales. It's really important to reflect on the fact that we are the first local authority, certainly in Wales, to take these steps forward in having a co-production corporate policy. And the purpose of that was so that we could embed co-productive approaches and ways of working across all directorates and service areas. To take on board the learning that I think we all took from the pandemic, where barriers were removed and we had to act quickly and to respond to certain situations. It is, of course, true, for example, that areas such as social services have been working in this way for a while longer, and we can share those best practices and case studies, and that we utilise the expertise of Co-Pro Lab, who are Wales's leading co-production and citizens involvement specialists, as we took this brave and bold journey, and that is exactly what it is for us. It's a journey. It's not tokenistic. We're very much learning and building upon good practice, and we recognise that this is the right thing to do for residents, whether it be, you know, on that spectrum of engagement, involvement, you know, and co-production. And we value their lived experiences, and ultimately is about delivering better outcomes for our residents. So there's a huge amount of work that's gone on, and I'd like to thank everybody that's been involved. You know, the co-production champions network, many of whom volunteered, you know, to take on board that, and also for case studies that's formed part of the toolkits, which will be talked about. And if I could just hand over to Lee and Rhian, who will take you through the report in more detail.
Okay, thank you for that. Have you really reduced this to co-pro? I'm just appalled. Lee.
Thank you, Chair. So I don't intend to go through the whole report, but I'll pick out the highlights, which is a kind of quick history of where we've got to. So as you know, we teamed up with Co-Production Lab Wales. They started their work with us in October 2022, and the idea was to look at what we were doing as a council and to build on that learning, and then in turn build on our capacity and capability within the council. So we went through a couple of phases. The first one was around the learning phase, where we had to look at existing good practice in the council, and it was things like having structures and frameworks and guidance already in place in some areas where we were doing some of that work. We had some resourcing in areas such as social services, where officers were already carrying out kind of co-production activities. We're also involving the wider community in some of our activities as well, which was something we thought was very useful and something we wanted to build on. And in particular areas, we had some strong and trusted relationships with communities and groups. So that's what the learning phase told us. Then in terms of some of the key findings that we needed to go forward, we needed to work on the culture so that people had a shared understanding and buy-in for co-production and what it meant and their role within that. That our infrastructure needed to have appropriate structures and decision-making structures in place, that we needed to develop the workforce through things like training and awareness building, and also then that we needed to support staff through learning, so that we built that kind of practice within the organisation. And then the things that we did on the back of that kind of learning phase and key findings was set up a champions network. So we had 48 officers in different services across the council, and they kind of became our ambassadors, and they learned from each other, and they kind of set the agenda for a lot of the work that we were doing. They kind of help develop policy, and they help develop and learn from case studies. We then set up a suite of training, which is also available through videos, and that includes things like from an introduction to co-production to how to use facilitation skills, and then using things like co-recruitment as part of a co-production approach. We've also developed a toolkit for staff, which has a lot of background information, but also supportive information to take them on that co-production journey. The policy which we drafted along with Co-Production Lab Wales was then approved by Council in January 2024. The conclusions that we drew from the work we'd done was that we made some really good progress in embedding co-production in parts of the council, that there were pockets of good practice that we needed to build on, that we were developing officers' skills and knowledge, and that by having a policy, the toolkit and training, we started to build on that commitment as a council of using co-production. To bring you right up to speed, Rena and I went to CMT recently, where we looked at what should be the next steps in terms of taking that policy but putting it into practice. How does the council now run with this policy? So what was agreed by the corporate management team was that we would promote the toolkit and policy at all levels throughout the council, that we wanted to refresh the champions group because we felt that we had 48 officers who came in at the front end of it and they helped us work with the development. Were they still the right people that would take our co-production agenda forward? So Rhiann's working with heads of service just to refresh that group. That we've started working on live projects, particularly within the transformation projects. So we're supporting them with co-production, and Co-Production Lab Wales also helped us with that work. And that how we now progress and develop co-production will be monitored by our Strategic Equalities Board, and we'll produce an annual report for the board. So that brings you right up to date with where we are at the moment, but happy to build on anything that I've told you or to answer any questions.
Okay, I guess the next stage would be a pilot.
In a way, we're already doing that in that we've used the transformation project as our pilot base. So we've spoken to, I think there's 12 projects. We've spoken to the leads, and I think about half of them have looked at using co-production within the project to date. So they're going to be our kind of pilots for now, and then we'll see how that's benefited them, what lessons learned, and then use it wider across the council.
So can you tell us what those projects are?
Sorry, Chair, I think they're listed in the report.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, yeah.
Bear with me a second. So we've got the Gower Domiciliary Care Support, Diversity Networks, West Glamorgan, Participation in Community Co-Production, Social Value Development, and our Community Hub Scoping session.
Okay, so so take the first one. How would that work? How would that work in terms of co-production?
So what we're doing is the co-production champions and Co-Production Lab Wales have been working with the project leads to see, first of all, whether co-production is appropriate to that project, and if it is, how they can then use it. So we're at the very early stages, so we haven't got at the minute a project that has progressed to its end point. So we're in those kind of early stages where they're looking at how co-production could, if at all, benefit and be used within the project. I would be happy if you wanted to, Chair, to come back to you at a later date with some proper results of how those projects have kind of used co-production.
I think it'd be useful to have some detailed sort of examples setting out exactly what happens in each particular project, so we can fully understand what the co-production process is and how it's working through in those projects. You know, some maybe some stories about what, you know, people's involvement and that sort of thing. That would be quite useful, I think. I mean, are you looking to produce some sort of report, annual report on co-production, or is this just going to be integrated into the main service delivery?
We'll be producing an annual review for the boards, for the Strategic Equalities Board, but we also then want to learn lessons. So what we will do is we'll build case studies from the projects that have used co-production and then promote them more widely across the council to encourage further uptake of co-production so people can see how and where it's been used.
Yeah, case studies was the phrase I was struggling to get to. Yeah. Could you circulate that report to councillors so we? Because I think, I mean, certainly my perspective of the council, unless you actually have it in front of us, you don't tend to be aware of what's going on. I think it'd be useful to all councillors to understand how that is working. That report,
certainly.
Has anyone got any questions on this? it does seem a bit esoteric at the moment. That's all. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we have any questions at all. So
Yes, you have.
Oh, who's that?
Chris.
Chris, go on. Chris, go on.
Thank you very much, Ailey, for the report and Chris Lee. The one thing I'd like to ask, if possible, obviously co-production means different things to different people. I think one of the things that would be helpful is if in the different areas that you could give a definition what you mean by that co-production in that particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Yeah, I think within the policy, I think on about page 6 or 7, there's like a diagram of what we mean by the kind of journey that you go on the spectrum towards co-production. And I think that's useful, and that's something which we want to promote more along with the toolkit and the policy, because I think at a glance that gives people a much better view of how co-production could work. So that's certainly something we'd want to promote more. And it's the diagram, Councillor Holly, that talks about doing to, doing for, and doing with, and it's the co-production element where it really is about kind of person-centered care, where you co-design a service or a policy change, and you work with service users or people affected by that potential change. But you are right, it would mean different things in different places, but we can give you some examples at a later date of where it's been used.
That's fine. Thank you, Lee.
I think when the working group was looking at this, we came to the conclusion that co-production was much easier to implement where you have specific client groups and you know, like social services and certainly the projects which I've now found in the report, you know, certainly underline that particular issue. So I think what I'm looking at is how we can extend co-production beyond that client group service delivery. Leader, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's a really important point, because when Cabinet looked at this for CMT, I think that was one of the key points of feedback from the people who are expert in it. It's that it would be wrong to make the assumption that, oh, well, we'll do co-production everywhere now because it's the new way of doing stuff. It isn't appropriate in many areas, but as you quite rightly pointed out there are some key areas where co-production really could have a real benefit. That's where it's being targeted, but it is that spectrum, as Lee has said, where it may be appropriate in some areas, won't be appropriate in others, but I think that's where we're trying now to see where it's most appropriate to go, and if we can extend it, we will. But it would be wrong to assume suddenly we're going to co-produce everything.
Yeah, I hesitate to mention waste collection, but certainly, I mean, certainly housing is a possibility. You could do some co-production projects, and it seems to me you do have a specific client group there. And, you know, certainly in terms of some of the services they deliver, that might be worth looking at as part of that. And I'm sure there are other, outside the social services ambit, there are some areas you could look at as part of that. Yeah. Okay, if no one's got any other questions, I think we might come back to this again in 12 months because this is still an ongoing and developing process. And I'm sure that the two social services panels particularly will be interested in looking at this as well. Neither convener are here today, but I certainly will mention it to them that might be worth looking at. But I do think we should look at it again in about 12 months because I think it'd be useful to see how it's developed as part of that. Okay, thanks very much, Lee. And
thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hayley. And thanks very much. Okay, item 9 is membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. There's some changes there. In particular, regeneration and finance, service improvement, generation and finance panel, Councillor Terry Hennigan and Councillor Bridget Rowlands have come off that, and climate change and nature performance panel, Councillor Joe Hale has come off that one. Item 10 is scrutiny letters, which are there for information. And item 11 is the scrutiny work programme, which actually does need to be approved because this has come out. This is what we've come out with following the scrutiny conference as to what we're going to be looking at. And you have it in front of you. Does anyone have any comments on this scrutiny work programme? Are we happy with the way we're approaching this? I'm going to take silence as consent unless someone actually says something. No? Okay, I'm going to take it you're happy with that then. Thank you very much for that. The next committee meeting is on the 17th of September, and we're going to be looking at homelessness and street scene improvements as part of that meeting there as well. Okay, so item 12 is date and time of upcoming scrutiny panel working groups. And so I'm going to now ask that we can go into camera. Can we move the relevant, do I have to stress what the relevant resolution is? Would you like to read it out for me? Yeah. Put your mic on.
Thank you, Chair. The committee is requested to exclude the public from the meeting during consideration of the item of business identified in paragraph 7 of the report, on the grounds that it is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as set out in the exclusion paragraph of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Wales Order 2007, relevant to the item of business to be discussed.
Great, I love all the legal stuff. Right, wait till we stop broadcasting. We stop recording, so we're now in camera.
You need to consider the public interest test first and deciding whether to exclude the public.
Okay.
Then we can move on.
Are we happy that the public interest test is sufficient to go into camera? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Great. So I need to